Today I'll be refuting the claim that high fructose corn syrup does not negatively, I'll be refuting the claim that high fructose corn syrup negatively impacts health trends. I'll prove this to you by showing you, showing you how the chemical difference between high fructose corn syrup, or HFCS, and sucrose is negligible, and that the rise of obesity and overall decreasing health in America cannot be attributed solely to the use of HFCS, and that the fight against HFCS leads to misconceptions about food. Firstly, the chemical difference between high fructose corn syrup and sucrose is extremely measurable. First off, there are two common types of HFCS used in foods today, which are HFCS 42 and HFCS 55. 42 has a 42% is 42% fructose, as opposed to the 50-50 ratio of the naturally occurring sucrose. And the advocate against high fructose corn syrup initially claimed that the high amount of fructose in high fructose corn syrup was what caused the negative effects of health in today's environment, and which sort of proves that it's not entirely HFCS's fault. The other percent is 50. The other high fructose corn syrup 55 is 55% fructose, which is again still negligible considering that's only merely a 5% difference. According to the American Medical Association, sucrose and HFCS contain the same components of the monosaccharides fructose and glucose, and that because of this, the body does not differentiate between high fructose corn syrup and sucrose, and that in the end they will both be digested and processed the same in the body. Secondly, the rise of obesity and overall decrease in health cannot be attributed solely to HFCS, as there are many other trends in the U.S. that can contribute to this. One of them being fast food, which since the 70s has gained popularity, and the consumption of which has increased dramatically. Statistics show that 1/3 of children in the U.S. consume fast food every day, which is 5 times of what children were consuming back in the 70s. And another thing is that fast food has extremely large portions and is extremely unhealthy, as is known to many. Another thing which can contribute to this is the lack of social and economic status, which means poor people cannot afford healthier food, which is the main problem, not HFCS. And another thing is decline in physical activity in general due to a rise in TV and video games and other non-physical activities, and another thing about this, thirdly, is the fight against HFCS leads to many misconceptions about food. Mainly the negative press of HFCS takes away from makes people misunderstand that and makes them think that it's mainly HFCS as the problem, and then in trying to remedy that situation, instead of trying to eat healthier, they mainly just substitute their large consumption with foods that do not contain HFCS. And the fight against HFCS also takes away from other problems with obesity, which such as overeating and unhealthy tendencies. While we should be focusing on that, we are instead trying to focus on HFCS, which is again not contributing largely to the fact that high fructose, contributing to the fact that it is negatively impacting the U.S. health trends. And again, to state my claims again, that the chemical difference between HFCS and sucrose is extremely negligible, and they are not noticed by the body. They are not processed or signified in the body any differently, and that the rise of obesity and other bad health in the country is due to many other circumstances rather than HFCS, and that HFCS is taking away from is leading people to misunderstand what is wrong with their diet.
All right, well, you identify the subject, and then you basically kind of respond to their claims by presenting just counterclaims on all of these points. I'm not sure that they are, in fact, counterclaims to the advocate's claims, or if they're generic claims that you've developed on this particular issue. I didn't really hear particular references to any of the advocate's evidence on this, so there's not really a direct challenge to the grounds that they've used. You're basically presenting counter evidence that suggests that there's not a significant difference between the chemical components in high fructose corn syrup and other products, and that and then you're making arguments that say there are other causality issues on these points. Okay, well, let's start with that first section where you do talk about and provide some evidence for your position that they're not substantially different. You got two different types of high fructose corn syrup. One has a 5% difference in one direction. One seems like it's got a 5% difference in the different direction. And you basically say that that's not significant. Well, it could be. 5% would make a big difference. Let's face it, if we were talking about tipping, it would be a huge difference. So why would it not be a difference in the human body? The best piece of evidence that you have is from the AMA, which says basically the body processes all of these things the same, and so it's not going to differentiate between sucrose or high fructose corn syrup. It's going to treat it exactly the same. I don't remember what the advocate's evidence on this point was, but if there was a difference, then you should be doing a little bit of contrasting with this evidence compared to what the advocate talked about on that particular point. And the second point, your second point, is basically a counterclaim on causality, and you've got a lot of general statements that you make here. There's no original research on any of these points, except that there is one statistic that's referred to that says that a third of kids today eat fast food on a daily basis, and that's 5 times greater than it was in the 1970s. That, I think, is a pretty good statistic. I didn't get a source citation on that, and that's the one statistic that you have to support your point that there are other causes for this increase in obesity. After that, where you mentioned socioeconomic status or decline in physical activity, those are all largely asserted. Socioeconomic status has always been a problem, so why would it be any different today than it was 40 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago? You don't give any explanation on that. And decline in physical activity, well, that's your assumption. I'm inclined to think that might be the case, but I don't have any reason to believe it other than my predisposition. It would be nice if you could show, for instance, that there has been, in fact, a decline in physical activity. Some evidence on that point would have been really helpful. Your third point, I think the phrasing is just complicated, and this is a place where the language needs to simplify your point. And basically, your point is focus on high fructose corn syrup is distracting us from finding real solutions. That's basically what the claim is, that if we keep worrying about this, we're not going to focus on the real things, which are lack of exercise, overconsumption of food, and overdependence on fast foods, which are the real issues. We're going to think this is the magic bullet, and it's not going to fix any problems. And it's sometimes just a simpler declarative sentence is going to make a lot more sense to an audience than your complicated explanation here. That's one of the reasons that simple claims work best in oral presentations. And so I think you got a little bit of a problem here. All right, thank you.